Okay, now we will talk about the third thing that is there before we roll on to the non-cooperation movement. Okay, the third thing that was there was the Khilafah movement. Now, what is this Khilafah movement? It is basically, see, as I started when the chapter was started, I also emphasized on the fact that when colonial empires, okay, so all are colonial empires basically. So when they are under an oppressive rule, if my neighbor is suffering under the same misery as I am, so I will unite. And something of this sort happened. Now what happened is that in this First World War, Ottoman Turkey was badly defeated. They participated in the World War and they were defeated. Okay, so the Ottoman Turkey was badly defeated in the First World War. Okay, Turkey was basically defeated. There were rumors. So whenever a country is defeated, okay, when a nation is defeated in a war, they have to generally sign on harsh treaties. Okay, so that they refrain from participating in war once again. Okay, just as Germany had to sign the Versailles Treaty. Okay, so in that case, there were rumors among the Muslim community that they will have to sign a harsh treaty on the Ottoman Emperor. Now, who was the Ottoman Emperor? The Ottoman Emperor was basically the Sultan, who was also regarded as the Caliph, as the spiritual head of Islam. Okay, so since Turkey was defeated, so they feared that there would be harsh treaties and laws that would be imposed on the Sultan of Caliph, and he is basically the leader of Islam, spiritual head of Islam. Okay, so a Khilafah movement committee or committee was formed in Bombay in March 1990 to defend against the Khalifa. Okay, so this was basically a committee that was formed. The purpose of this committee was to oppose the imposition of any harsh treaty on the symbolic head of Islam. Okay, so committee leaders were there, these were brothers basically, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. Okay, they wanted Gandhi to take up the cause. Okay, so if harsh treaties are being imposed, it will be imposed on the entire community, and that's what they they kind of convinced Gandhi to take up the cause. Okay, what was the cause? To pressurize the authority of the Ottoman Sultan as the Caliph of Islam. Okay, so that his authority remains as it was before, as per the Islamic traditions. So his power should not be crippled. Okay, the powers of the Ottoman Sultan, who is regarded as the Caliph of Islam, his power should not be crippled owing to the harsh restrictions that might be imposed due to losing in the war. Okay, so the Khilafat issue. So this was a Khilafat movement. Basically, this was launched by the brothers, and this Khilafat issue, Gandhi thought that this would be a common issue. Okay, since Indians are already resentful, and so he thought that this would bring the Hindus and the Muslims together. So he took up the cause. Okay, the Khilafat movement or the issue gave Gandhi an opportunity to unite the Hindus and the Muslims on a common platform. And at the Calcutta session of the Congress in September 1920, the resolution was passed to launch a non-cooperation movement, which we are going to study. Okay, in support of the Khilafat and also for Swaraj. Okay, so in the non-cooperation movement that was launched, so it was the Khilafat movement was also taken up, as well as the cause for India's Swaraj was also taken up. Okay, so the Khilafat movement was basically launched by the Muslims because they felt that their religion is in danger when their head is in danger. Okay, the Islamic head was in danger of being imposed strict restrictions, and that's when the Khilafat movement was launched. Okay, so Gandhi took up the cause, and he took this as an opportunity to bring the Hindus and the Muslims, which have been divided for a very long time for certain reasons. Okay, so that they can unite and fight for the common struggle for India's independence. Okay, you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, so now we will move on to a more organized struggle that was initiated by Gandhi, and this was the first struggle that was initiated by Gandhi was non-cooperation movement. Now, as the name itself suggests, it indicates a kind of non-cooperation. It means that there was cooperation, right? Non-cooperation means that there was cooperation. So cooperation means what? When you are actually supporting somebody. So according to Gandhi, okay, he had written a book in 1909, and that was the name of the book was Hind Swaraj. In that, he mentions that the British rule was established in India due to cooperation by Indians. If we go back when Lord Clive had actually come and the Battle of Plassey was formed, then there was this Mir Qasim, who was basically an uncle of Nawab Sirajuddaula, and he actually supported the Britishers. In fact, in all the regions where the Britishers had actually established, there was some sort of cooperation from the ruling regions out there. So the British rule, by and large, it had come to do business in India, and it certainly saw that there's a cooperation beyond business that they are receiving. Okay, they saw that they had come here to basically do business with Indians, but they saw that Indians are too weak amongst themselves. They are betraying each other. So basically what it meant was that they can receive cooperation from all quarters, and that's how they expanded. Okay, so from a simple business instinct, it became a ruling instinct. Automatically they saw that there's a huge opportunity that lies between the Indians, because they will cooperate with us. If one doesn't cooperate, the other one cooperates. If one fights, the other one supports. Okay, so Gandhi was not wrong in saying that India was established with the British rule in India was established with the cooperation of India, and it was surviving also because of this cooperation. So this cooperation didn't die out with support of establishing. This was continuing. Okay, because the Britishers were just a handful. They were ruling India with Indians. Okay, army was made up of Indians, police was made up of Indians. In fact, the entire army which was deployed in Jallianwala Bagh to massacre people, that was basically made up of Indians. It's basically Indians who are shooting Indians. Okay, so it was so obviously government jobs filled of Indians, civil servants filled of Indians, armies filled of Indians, police, all administrative jobs were basically filled up of Indians. Okay, so there was a huge majority of people which were supporting the Britishers. Okay, so Gandhi said that the Britishers were able to establish themselves due to cooperation of Indians, and they are continuing to rule India because of Indians. So this cooperation has to end. Okay, if we end this cooperation, obviously they will be able to, they will have to back out. Okay, so, and it survived only because of this cooperation. So this survived only, the entire rule survived only because of cooperation. He believed that if Indians refused to cooperate, the British rule would collapse in a year. Okay, so what he believed was that if the Indians refused to cooperate, the entire British rule will collapse within a year, and Swaraj would be established. Okay, so his agenda was refusal to cooperate. Okay, so what he's saying is that if the Britishers basically refuse to cooperate, the entire thing would collapse. If the Indians refuse to cooperate, the entire system would collapse in a year. They will not be able to go even beyond a year in order to rule India. Okay, so now this was an idea which was expressed. How will this idea be executed? Okay, so he had proper steps, or he had proper plans to execute this idea. Okay, what he meant was first to make the people aware that Britishers are not ruling because of Britishers. Britishers are ruling because we are supporting them. We are basically the ones who are cooperating with them, and now the time has come when we have to withdraw this cooperation. Okay, so this was basically unfolded by Gandhi in certain steps. Okay, so what were those steps? So some of the things that he had actually proposed: surrender to the titles which were awarded by the British government. Now the British government basically recognized people for their efforts in different fields of science, literature, etc. For example, Rabindranath Tagore, he got the title of knighthood because of his contribution to poetry. He also got the Nobel Prize. So the title of knighthood that was offered to Rabindranath Tagore by the Britishers was returned by him. Okay, so any kind of title that was given by the British government, Gandhi is saying return it back to them. We don't need them. Okay, if you are acknowledging our talent, if you are praising our talent, so you should acknowledge the entire India as well. Okay, you don't have to acknowledge an Indian, you have to acknowledge the entire India as well. Okay, so surrender to the titles which were awarded by the British government. So what Gandhi said was, whatever titles have been conferred, Sir, knighthood, etc., all these are basically titles that were conferred by the Britishers. So they have to be returned. Okay, so that was one thing. boycott all civil services, army, police, courts, legislative council, schools, etc. Okay, so what he's saying is boycott all civil services. Civil services means administrative services, or let's say district magistrate, collector, okay, then we have revenue, then we have police, okay, so all these are basically civil services. So all those who were employed in civil services, Gandhi is saying boycott your job, okay, leave them, okay, because if you leave them in huge numbers, they cannot have all the people coming down from Great Britain to rule India. India was a hugely populated country, so if we back out, obviously their entire system will collapse, okay. So all those people who were employed as in civil services means government services, all those people who were employed in these government services, they should back out and quit their job. All those people who were employed in the army, they should back out and quit their job, okay, because army was mainly made up of all these people. All these people who were employed in the police, okay, they should back out. All those lawyers, there were a lot of lawyers and judges who were employed in the courts, Gandhi is also backing them, so back out and quit their job. Legislative councils. Now what are legislative councils? Legislative councils are basically, see, the Britishers were very smart in basically forming a legislative council. Although they always ensured that their rule is followed, although they always ensured that their agenda is taken care of, they always had a handful of people whom they would select, and they would say that you have your Indians have their representative in the legislative council, so whatever decisions are being taken by consulting with them or taking them into consideration. The Rowlatt Act, for example, it was not, the Indians were not consulted, or it was just imposed as a law, okay. So they used to show something and do something, that's how it is, okay. So since it is a very so Gandhi said boycott all these legislative councils. It makes no sense. First of all, it is just a representation, just to make Indians feel that somebody is representing for their cause in the government, but in truth it is not, okay. So he said it's better to boycott such a fake job, okay. Again, it somehow supports their cause. Again, he said people who were employed in schools and all, they should also boycott. So Gandhi's entire thing was boycott all these government jobs, so that they do not have any people working in their offices or on their jobs, and when they do not have enough of people, it will become next to impossible for them to run the country and run the show, okay. Launch of civil disobedience. Now what if it is, so these were certain steps that were proposed, and these were certain things that he made people aware of and requested people to do so, okay. Now what if British sirs again crushed this entire thing, as they had done in the Rowlatt Act, as they had crushed the entire Rowlatt Act by the Jallianwala massacre or whatever happened in Amritsar. So they forcefully crushed the entire thing. So then Gandhi he said that if it happens, then we will launch a civil disobedience. Civil disobedience means when you actually go on to streets to protest, okay. So if non-cooperation movement is not acknowledged by the British government, then we will take civil disobedience. So the roots of civil disobedience movement, which will be the next movement that we will study in detail, were actually shown in the non-cooperation movement itself. If government resorted to oppressive measures to crush this, then we will resort to civil disobedience movement, okay. So the entire idea of non-cooperation was to bring down the government by boycotting everything, by boycotting jobs, by boycotting all kind of involvements in jobs as well, okay, by boycotting different types of services. Yes, boycott of foreign goods. There was a huge addition of foreign goods. I'm sorry I missed it on this point, okay. See, what Britishers used to do is pick up the raw materials and produce goods in their own country and sell it back to Indians, okay. So in picking up raw materials at a very cheap or almost no price, they are benefiting, manufacturing it in their industries, and again reselling it back to India. They are benefiting twice, okay. So they are benefiting twice, which is basically strengthening the government, okay. So what Gandhi proposed was boycott all these foreign goods. All these goods which are produced offshore by the Britishers, they should be boycotted. We should be self-reliant and manufacturing our own goods of basic necessities, rather than relying on the goods that are coming from Britain and being resold to India, okay. So that was one. So boycotting foreign goods, boycotting government jobs, boycotting schools, army, police, legislative councils, all this should be boycotted on a very large scale, so that ultimately the government falls. Okay, it falls like a pack of cards. What he had actually estimated is that if this non-cooperation movement becomes a success, it will not take us more than a year to get the British out of India. Okay, we had some challenges, of course, and that's something that we are going to study. So if you see, he also threatened of civil disobedience if the government is resorting to oppressive measures, as it did in the case of Rowlatt Act, to crush this movement. Okay, so non-cooperation in itself is basically non-cooperation in all spheres of existence for the British Empire. Okay, you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, so now we are going to study about the impacts of the non-cooperation movement. Okay, now what are the impacts of non-cooperation movement? See, when a movement is started, obviously India has gone through a lot of suppression by Britishers, by other rulers as well. So it's not that easy that you launch a movement and the entire India will actually back up the movement. Okay, so when a movement is launched, how do we consider that movement, or how do we participate in that movement? Okay, that becomes a deciding factor. So the movement was launched, but was it entirely successful, or was it as per what Gandhi had thought, or as per what the agenda was? Okay, no, it failed in different frontiers differently. Okay, and there were reasons for its failures in small. Was it 100% successful? No. Okay, it was not 100% successful, and there are reasons for it not being 100% successful. But was it successful in uniting the people of India? Yes, to a great extent, yes. Okay, so we will now understand that whenever a movement is launched, people take it as per their perception. Okay, see, the first problem, first I will talk about my problems and my family problems, and then I will cater to problems in the neighborhood, and then I will talk about the country. That's the general thing that goes with people, right? So here Gandhi is expecting the entire nation to unite in the form of non-cooperation movement by quitting their jobs, by quitting all government titles, by quitting all government schools, by quitting all government jobs of military or police. Okay, so but will the people actually follow that? Okay, yes, they joined his party and they joined his call for Swaraj, but in a different sentiment. Okay, they knew that now we have to stand up for our rights, but for what rights and to what extent? Okay, so were they completely aligned with the movement? To an extent, no. So we will consider the impacts of this movement in different sections of the society. So first of all, what we are going to consider is the countryside, means the village people, or the people who are generally farmers, peasants, okay, or village craftsmen and all. Okay, so different people responded differently to the call of Swaraj. The different people had different perceptions about non-cooperation movement. So they understood that we now have to undergo non-cooperation, but they misunderstood to whom we have to do a non-cooperation. Okay, so it was against the Britishers that we have to do a non-cooperation movement, but people now have understood that they have to stand up for their rights. Okay, but they were not standing up in the correct way. The alignment was not there, or rather it was missing. So what happened in Awadh? In Awadh, peasants were led by Baba Ramchandra. So who was Baba Ramchandra? Peasants means farmers. Okay, they were led by Baba Ramchandra. Now who was Baba Ramchandra? He was basically a sannyasi. I would say he was an endangered laborer. Okay, endangered laborer who was employed in Fiji Islands. Now what do we mean by endangered laborer? Endangered laborer means that the Britishers used to pick up people and they used to post them at different places. Okay, so they had plantations everywhere. So many people were enslaved and put in different locations. They were picked up from a country, they were sold, and they were exported to a different country to work somewhere else for a different project. Okay, so Baba Ramdev was also basically employed in Fiji Islands as a plantation worker, and he came back to India. Okay, now he basically understood that the peasants have a very rough patch of their lives. Now what is happening here is that they were exploited not only by the Britishers, they were exploited by the landlords. We had the zamindari system at that point of time. Landlords were there. Now what used to happen is that merchants were there. we used to actually, these poor peasants used to actually kind of borrow money from them. And obviously due to poor crop production and all, they were not able to return the money on time or return the payment in full. So if you don't happen to return the payment in full or return the money on time, then a part of your land was confiscated. A part of your land was actually this was basically a security that was deposited. Till I pay my loan back, till I pay my if I am a peasant, till I pay my loan back, I am not going to get my land back from the landlord. However, I can do the farming there. Okay, so I can cultivate whatever I am doing. I can cultivate my own cropping and all that, but I will get my land back properly as a proprietor or owner of the land only when I happen to pay the sum back. So it was a guarantee or a security that peasants used to enter into an agreement with landlord. But what used to happen is that most of the times they were not able to pay the money back in full, and the interest and the rents that were charged were too high, exorbitantly high. Okay, so the interest that was charged on whatever they used to take was very high. What they used to do is, supposedly they have a land part from A, for the farmer A was not able to pay, so this was confiscated. Now what they will do is, they will ask a farmer B to actually cultivate on the land A and give rent for the production. Till the time he is using that land, he will pay a rent to the landlord. So the landlord is basically earning from both sides, okay, from the farmer and from the peasant who is employed in this land as well. But these rents were so high that the crop production was not even able to meet up the expense. So the peasants were basically tortured from both the ends. Okay, so peasants had to do beggar and work. What do we mean by beggar? It doesn't mean the beggar like BGGAR double G. It means beggar. Beggar means work without payment. Okay, in India we call it begari. Okay, begari means that you are employed somewhere, you are compelled to do some work without any payment. And these peasants were subjected to these kinds of torture. Okay, so they were not able to claim their land back, and they were forced to do labor on the land without getting any payment. So their condition deteriorated day by day. So peasants had to do beggar and work, and landlords' farms without any payments, on landlords' farms without any payments. And where are these farms coming from? They are the farms of the peasants themselves. The reason why they are becoming landlords' farms are because they are not able to pay their exorbitantly high interest and the loan that they had taken from the landlords, because of which the peasants suffered a lot. Okay, so they had no right over the leased land. So at times the land which was confiscated from one farmer was leased out to another farmer to do cultivation and pay a rent as well. But these rents were too high to match up. Okay, so peasants were in a very miserable condition. Okay, so they had no right over the leased land. So when Baba Ramchandra actually took off the agitation, he first he followed the non-cooperation satyagraha movement, and the peasant movements demanded, so they stood up for their rights. They demanded reduction of the revenue which is basically a tax that they had to pay there for their land. Abolition of beggar. Abolition of beggar means that whenever a peasant is employed in a particular field, he has to be paid. So no longer without payment services. Okay, and social boycott of oppressive landlords. So they want these, see in olden days, what used to happen is that if a person in a village is not found to follow the conducts and the rules of the village, he was boycotted from the village. So according to the peasants, these landlords were so oppressive and so they had caused so much of turbulence and disturbance in their lives that they should be socially boycotted. So these were the certain demands that they had, and there was this Awadh Kisan Sabha that was formed in villages. Even Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, he began going to villages and addressing this concern in Awadh. Okay, now what happened is, by and large, slowly this gained momentum. Okay, the peasants movement was slowly by and large gaining momentum against the oppressive rule of the landlords. So what is happening here is that there is an oppressive rule of the Britishers, and Gandhi had launched the non-cooperation movement to protest against them. The peasants actually followed satyagraha, but they were against the oppressive rule of the landlords. Rather than oppressing the Britishers, who were the main causes, they were now oppressing the landlords, because they thought that the cause of their misery is only these landlords and talukdars. So it was a fight in the home itself. amongst the Indians itself. Okay, so let's say if there is a house and there are a lot of members staying in that house, and basically somebody else has done a mischief against that house, so the members start fighting amongst themselves. That's what has happened here. Okay, so these peasants started fighting against the landlords, which was correct. However, this was not in sync with the objective of the non-cooperation movement. The objective of the non-cooperation movement was to bring non-cooperation against the Britishers. It was primarily against the Britishers, but here it kind of evolved in a kind of village tussle between the members itself. So between the peasants and the landlords, a war kind of thing started. So houses of the talukdars and landlords and merchants were looted, attacked, plundered. Okay, bazaars wherein a huge stock of grain was piled up were looted. Grain hazards were taken, grain hoards were taken over. Okay, and this made the congressmen unhappy, because this was not according to the principles of the non-cooperation movement. So yes, the spirit of standing up for your rights, that was indeed there, that was there from non-cooperation movement, but the direction was in a different way. Okay, so instead of going against the Britishers, this movement actually gained momentum and it went against the talukdars and the landlords. So a fight amongst or rather a fight in the home itself started. Okay, so that's what happened on the countryside. We are going to also learn as to how it impacted the towns. So most of the villages were going through this. Okay, you can take a snapshot of the same.